Special right triangles. So we're talking about 30, 60, 90, and 45, 45, 90 triangles. Both are right triangles because they have the 90. But their special rules when one angle is 60 and 30, and two angles are 45. First, 45, 45, 90. Whenever we have a 45, 45, 90 degree triangles, we will always have the hypotenuse will equal the square root of 2 times a leg. Remember, a leg is just one length that is in my triangle. In the 45, 45, 90, the two angles, or the two sides that are across from 45, are always going to be the same length. So in this case, if this was S and S, this would be S square root 2. Because again, the hypotenuse is square root times the leg. And it's always in that ratio pattern for a 45, 45, 90 triangle. So two different problems here. Now, you can set this up however it works for you. What I typically do for 45, 45, 90 is I write in, okay, here's across from 45. I know that's going to be S, S, and it's always going to be my hypotenuse is equal to S square root 2. So in this case, I know S is equal to 9. So if S is equal to 9, then H would be equal to 9 square root 2, because H is equal to S square root 2, and since S is equal to 9, that would be my final answer. Now this one is a little bit more tricky, because across from my 45 would be my S, S, S square root 2. And remember your hypotenuse. Remember, hypotenuse is always straight across from my 90. Hypotenuse is always going to be the shortest side, so in this case it's 2 square root 2 times square root 2. A lot of times students see a square root 2 already in the problem and they think they don't have to still add in the second square root 2. So if I were to simplify this, again, this is what x is equal to, because it's my shortest length, times square root 2. This would be 2 times the square root of 4, because square root 2 times square root 2 is 4, which is 2 times 2, so x here is equal to 4. And the last type of problem that we have, again, the hypotenuse is going to be the S, the shortest side, times square root 2. And I'm looking for x, which is the same thing as just your shortest side. So in this case, if I labeled the hypotenuse S square root 2, that's going to be equal to 6. So I'm going to write out that equation. 6 is equal to S square root 2. And x, if I look here, is equal just to s. So I want to get the s by itself. So in this case, this is multiplying, so I have to divide by square root 2 on both sides. So now I have 6 square root 2 is equal to s. You should never have a radical in the bottom of the denominator, so I have to make sure to rationalize it. So square root 2 over square root 2. So on top, this is going to be 6 square root 2. On bottom, this right here becomes the square root of 4, which is just 2. Now I look, can I simplify this any further? Well, yes, I can. 6 divided by 2 is 3, so my answer here would be 3 square root 2. And that would be my final answer. So in this problem, I want you to attempt it by yourself, but your first thing you should always do is draw a picture. So if I have a picture, it's telling me I have a 45, 45, 90. And it's saying the length of the hypotenuse is 10. So I'm going to write 10 in here. What is the side length? So again, it's kind of like the previous problem. So I want you to pause the video and attempt the problem by yourself and check your work. You should have gotten your answer as 5 square root 2. Remember, you have to rationalize the denominator. You should never have a root in the bottom of a fraction. So the other special triangle that we have is a 30, 60, 90. So two things here. We have a short leg, we have a medium leg, and we have the long leg. Hypotenuse is always the long leg. So hypotenuse is always going to be 2 times the short leg, and the longer leg, or as I say is the medium leg, is going to be square root 3 times the short leg. Now when you're looking at this picture, and in this picture there's a 30, there's a 60, and there's a 90. Always straight across from your 30, this is always going to be your shortest leg. So this would always be in the format of x, because again, the ratio doesn't change. And the medium leg is always your shorter leg, so in this case it's x square root 3. And my long leg is 2 times my short leg. So again, it's the same ratio, and the shorter leg is always straight across from 30. So here, what are the values of x and y in simplest radical form? So one thing, I know this would be 30. So straight across from 30, this is my shortest leg, so this is like my x. Across from my medium leg, which is 60, is x square root 3. And across from my 90 degrees is 2 times my short leg. So since in this picture, where I have a number, it is labeled x, then I can figure out what y and x are. Because here it says x is equal to 12. So when I find out what my hypotenuse is, it's 2 times x. So in this case, it's going to be 2 times 12. So this value is going to be 24. If I look at what my y is going to be 12 times square root 3 because, again, x is 12. So it would be 12 square root 3. And those would be my simplest radical form. So it's just knowing the proportions and the ratios that the triangle sets up. So again, I have the 30, 60, 90. Your first step is label your sides. Label your sides x, x square root 3, and 2x. The x doesn't really matter when you're using this. You can use any variable. But again, across from my 30 is always going to be my shortest side, so that's going to be my x. Across from my 60 is my medium side, that's x square root 3. And across from my 90 is 2x. Once you label your sides, then you should look what information is given. What info is given, and by that I mean where's the number. So in this picture, I have the number at 5. So 5 is going to be equal to whatever I labeled it. So then my next step is set up an equation with the number given. Equation. So I'm going to have 5 equal to x square root 3. Because I need to figure out what x is. I need to figure out what that missing variable is to figure out the other two sides. So here I'm going to divide by square root 3, and again, you have to rationalize your denominator. You cannot leave it as square root 3. So I'm going to multiply by square root 3 over square root 3. So this becomes 5 square root 3 over 3, because it's a square root 9, and the square root of 9 is 3. So now that's what x is equal to, right here. So now, because I already have an x where d is, I know d is going to be equal to 5 square root 3 over 3. And f is going to be equal to 2 times x, which we found to be 5 square root 3 over 3. And I have to simplify that, so this would be 10 square root 3 over 3, and that would be my final answer. I know that these problems can seem confusing, but again, just labeling the picture will help you tremendously. Here I have a word problem. The distance from a base is 60 feet. So in this picture, saying that I have a square, how far does the catcher have to throw? A few things I know that each angle in a square is 90 degrees. Now, if I cut this length in half, that means that each of these two angles would be 45. Why? Because 90 divided by 2 is 45. So now I'm dealing with the 45, 45, 90 triangle. And remember that ratio is going to be s square root square root 2. Because it's your shortest side times square root 2 for your hypotenuse. And say my s is equal to 60, because it's giving me that in my picture. So it says to the nearest tenth of a foot. How far does the catcher have to throw from home base to second base? So that's my hypotenuse here. So in this case it would be 60 square root 2, because s is my shortest side length and my hypotenuse is shortest side length times square root 2. Now since it's asking to the tenth of a foot, I'm actually going to put this into my calculator. And now we get 84.85. The reason I wrote the 5 is because I want you to see I'm rounding to the nearest tenth. That's the first decimal spot. So this 5 right here is going to bump it up. So it would be 84.9 and my units here are feet. So that is all I have for you today. Make sure you took good notes and have a great day.